So this is going to be a time lapse where I'm talking over what it is I'm working on here, and what I've done here is I did a study in Procreate using what appears to be a production still from the movie Immortals, which came out I think back in 2011 or 2012, maybe even 2010. I recently saw the movie, and I had been watching the movie clips here and there. Somehow I stumbled upon it on YouTube, and it just showed up, and I knew who the lead character was, Henry Cavill, because obviously we all know who he is. I certainly do, because of Superman, Man of Steel, Justice League, and some Mission Impossible movie as well. But I decided to finally rent the movie, and I did, and I loved it. I thought it was pretty cool, certainly visually at least. So when I start working on a painting, I like to begin with a drawing. And for me, the importance of the drawing, leads me, actually begins with me selecting an image that I like and I want to draw. But what the drawing allows me to do is allows me to do a couple of things, which is kind of set up the proportions, kind of get a feel for how I want to set up the composition, and I can also begin to start building the forms, strictly focusing on drawing. Now this is a photo that I'm working from as reference, and so the composition's kind of set up, but this is also kind of partly my own fantasy painting, in a way that I'm using the characters, the figures here in this reference, as the reference for the foreground. But I'm also going to take a separate image still related to the source material here, which is this movie, and kind of blend the two. So right now what I'm doing is really starting out to build the forms, and as you can see as I'm working here, I've got a pencil brush in Procreate, and after I've gone through and lightly sketched out and build the forms, now I'm starting to put in a little more detail here. So even going so far as to start adding some shading, even though I know I'm going to be painting over this eventually. So it's still important for me to kind of do this kind of underdrawing. Here is the background photo that I'm using, or the photo that I'm using that's going to help set up my background here, which is really just kind of inspiration for the sky and some columns in the background. But getting back to the drawing, once I pretty much solidify kind of like all the elements and how the composition is going to fit together, I then go into the drawing, and then I do add what you see here, which is kind of like a base undertone color. And I use a little bit of airbrush to brush in that blue sky, kind of getting in some nice smooth transitions there, and then go right into just start to kind of basically block out some of the forms here. So in this case, I'm blocking out the kind of the head / dress that the female character here is wearing, and then I start going in and start brushing in some of the tones for the flesh, for the skin of these characters, the flesh tones. I go in spotting in some highlights, working all around the characters' hands, their bodies, parts of their costume. In this case, the male character here, Theseus, he's shirtless and he only has pants that we can see, but there's quite a bit of detail going on with the female character, who is this oracle-like character, between the dress, and you've got like this sheer cover that she's wearing that's going across her chest area and her neck. Here I am making sure that as I build more layers, I am labeling what those layers are. Going through now, adding some of the background. I try to work generally to where I move the painting, all parts of the painting simultaneously. Like I try to work all areas at the same time. Although you definitely did see that I started off with the background first, and then establishing the colors, and then moving to the foreground with the characters. But because I think those things are important, because they definitely influence what kind of highlights we're going to see. Like for instance, I'm kind of messing around here with adding some bluish highlights to the area. Definitely a lot cooler temperature wise, at least in Procreate here. As I'm starting out, the reference photo to the left is very warm, yet here in my version, my rendition, I've got them set up underneath like this space or this nighttime sky backdrop. And so it's very cool. You have those colors, it's nighttime, you have dark sky, blue sky, and you have some stars and a little bit of space matter in the light blue, kind of a spattering of colors back there. and I'm basically just using all points of the painting to kind of go back and forth. Like there's a little bit of warmth that I'm trying to play off of the red part of her costume, her dress, that is, going to be seen in some of the tones in his body. Not a whole lot, but starting out, that's kind of like the direction I feel I want to go off in. And so I'm just playing with that pretty much throughout. Even though as I'm here painting the darker areas, the shadows, I'm still keeping in mind like what colors are surrounding, what colors are the characters wearing, which might reflect into their shadows. And here, because she's got a lot of red on her with the red headband and the red that's around her head, and her body, and she even has like a bit of a red dress, the shoulder strap there. There's a lot of red there, so I'm aware of that as I'm painting and playing with the shadows as well. So that's another thing is to be aware of when you're working on your painting here, is to look at what are the colors that could influence the shadows and some of the surface areas of the different elements in the painting. So like here in this case, I'm painting the woman's hands, and I have some nice reference here that I'm using, and I'm trying to basically spot the light, dark areas, and of course the mid-tone areas as well. But there's also a fair amount of redrawing that takes place throughout the process. Even though I did a lot of that under drawing beforehand that we saw at the beginning of the video, I definitely will go back and still continue to draw as I'm painting here. And I think it's really a secret when you're, or not a secret, but kind of one of the skills to develop, is even though we start a painting with a drawing in this case, and you can draw with a pencil or a piece of with paint or the brush or charcoal or whatnot, but it's still drawing is what it comes down to. What I'm doing here now, I'm adding some shadows and some tones to the figure, blocking in dark areas, lighter areas, warm areas, cooler areas, and basically it's just kind of a hodgepodge of colors, and you don't really see the definition until I start bringing in shadows, start bringing in line, and start bringing in highlight areas. But definitely the temperature that I put down on the body also helps to kind of inform what parts of the body are curving up, which parts are curving away, going into shadow. And so when working in Procreate like I am here, one of the nice things is that I have access to a range of tools that are at my fingertips, literally. And I'll say this because of digital painting, but I've done painting where I'm working with tools, traditional tools, and it is nice to work with a nice palette, if you will. Not palette, a nice toolbox of brushes and pens. So when I'm working on this painting here, obviously I'm using reference, and I'm using, to me, what I think is a pretty good piece of reference. And granted, this is just a study, but it's a piece of reference that I found based on the movie that got me excited, that inspired me to pick up this piece, because I liked the composition, and of course you have the characters in the foreground here. They're actors, right? They're Hollywood stars. They're very attractive, and so painting these types of images for me has always been fun and also challenging, though, at the same time, to try and work on a certain amount of likeness with this piece here. And so using good reference is another aspect to creating these types of representational type of illustrations, and making sure you have good photos with good lighting that are clear, that give good details. You'll see me here going back and forth on the left side. I've got a split screen here going on where I am utilizing either the Photos application on my iPad or Photoshop to reference the image. And I recommend that you use something that is literally side by side. You can use like a separate monitor, I suppose, on your desktop computer or some other device to reference it, but it's really nice to have a side by side on the same screen to reference the image. So as I'm winding down the painting here, and by the way, this is obviously a time lapse, but I'm trying to talk you through a little bit of my process as I go through this. as I'm working on this, I'm constantly referencing that photo. By the time we get to the end, like what I'm doing here, I'm carefully placing my signature on the piece. The photograph is definitely what this study is based on, and it's basically a method by which I can help train myself to utilize further develop my skills in using reference and painting. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. If you like this, give it a thumb up, and I would appreciate it if you subscribed as well. And I'll catch you in the next video.